I'm finding my vibe in this magical place, in frequency fluidity.
Well, hello there, and welcome to Frequency Fluidity with Jessie. Hey, that's me. Today, I want to talk about emotions, and I want to talk about why emotions are a-okay. So, when I was younger, I had a really hard time identifying my emotions because there was a lot of manipulation, emotional manipulation going on around me. Um, Things were not talked about. And when I brought them up, the uncomfortableness uh, around me taught me a couple of things. And I don't think that what I was taught was necessarily correct. But these are the things that I learned by observing the people around me. So, the reason that I want to talk about this is because if you have kiddos at home, I want you to understand that a lot of our littles are really struggling with emotional regulation. And I think a big part of it, and again, I'm going off of my experience and what I've seen, but I think a big part of it is that a lot of our friends don't know how to identify what they are feeling. And if they are able to identify what they're feeling, they're not able to put a strategy in place to emotionally regulate themselves. So, I want to talk a little bit about that. So, what I learned by observing the people around me when I was young is that it was okay for me to be happy. It was okay for me to be goofy. It was okay for me to be smart. It was okay for me to do things that made people proud. It wasn't okay to question or to push back or to do anything that would require a deep conversation. You know what I'm saying? Those things were just avoided. And it really did me a disservice because by observing around me, I internalized that as there were positive emotions and there were negative emotions. Positive emotions, I was able to play out in front of everybody. And the negative emotions, I played out privately with no support. And that's not really how it's supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? Those are the times when you need support, when you're sad, when you're confused, when you're questioning, when you don't understand. Those are the times that you need the adults around you to help you identify what the emotions are, um, identify strategies for how to deal with them. But the most important thing is literally like talking about it. You don't talk about it. Kiddos internalize it and they will learn whatever is around them. That's what they'll learn and that's what they'll take in. So also remember that every time you are emotionally regulated around your child, it shows them how to handle hard things because we're all going to have to deal with hard things in our life, right? Okay, so when I started going to therapy, and this was addressed later in therapy, I brought up this notion of positive and negative emotions. And my therapist was confused. And she was like, "What do you mean? Explain that to me." And so I explained it. And she said, "Okay, let's reframe that. Emotions are just emotions, they're not positive or negative." And I was like, wow, emotions are just emotions. It was almost like a light bulb moment for me. And it sounds so silly, right? It sounds so simple and silly. But when you have childhood trauma, it messes with the wiring in your brain. Your brain will find the path of least resistance to survive. And when you have that kind of trauma as a child and it's not being addressed and worked through, that's what your brain does, right? It creates a way for you to survive in your environment. Okay, so I didn't give a definition, but let me go ahead and tell you exactly what emotional manipulation is. It occurs when somebody deliberately influences your emotions, thoughts, or behavior for their own benefit, typically without your consent. Specifically, I'm talking about children because rarely do they have the ability to give consent for a lot of things. It leaves you feeling confused, drained, doubting your judgment. For me, this was the biggest side effect. I still sometimes, I did it this weekend. I still sometimes look for outside validation of my own ideas because sometimes I still don't trust my own judgment. It took me a really, really long time to be able to trust what my own brain was telling me because it had lied to me for so long. You know what I'm saying? And somebody this weekend, I love you, my Kimmy, told me nobody else's opinion matters. It matters what you think. And it was a reminder. She's right. This is my project. These are my thoughts. These are my opinions. They're not right or wrong, just like emotions. They're my opinions. They're my truth. They're my lived experience. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So the core components of emotional manipulation are it strips away your identity. Again, this turned me from a kid to a dirty little secret. That's what this did. It allowed my identity of being a child, of childhood to be taken from me and replaced with this dirty, nasty secret, this dirty little secret. It leaves you doubting your judgment and it exploits your vulnerability or empathy. I'm naturally an extremely empathetic person. I give a lot of grace because I've been given a lot of grace in my life. And my empathy and vulnerability have been used against me. And it's hard because I don't want to change the nature of who I am. Like, it's taken me so long to get to this place and be comfortable with it that I don't want others to take me out of it, right? But it's hard. I struggle with it. I still struggle with positive self-identification. You know what I'm saying? It also, I want you to understand that these are covert tactics that are used. It's not, okay, so don't get me wrong. There were people in my life when I was a child who would straight up be blunt and make me feel a certain way. And then there were others in my life who took the back road in and recognized that I really wanted love and I really wanted acceptance and belonging. And that person provided it to me to exploit it, to use it, to take that attachment and twist it into his own gratification. So the distortion of reality, rewriting things that happen. No, that didn't happen. That must have been a dream. That's a big one I'm going to keep coming back to. Must have been a dream. That didn't really happen. Oh, that person wouldn't do that. I don't think of them like that. Okay. So rewriting of events, gaslighting. Big time. Didn't have a word for it. Now I do. Guilt tripping, love bombing, silent treatment. I mean, all of these things are part of emotional manipulation. And again, you don't see the cycle until you're out of it and you go, okay, I can see now. But at 6, I didn't have those skills. But I do now, and I'm safe, and I can talk about them, and I can warn other people. And that's what I'm here for. Okay, so now let's talk about how do we build emotional resiliency by being able to talk about emotions. Resiliency is remembering who you are after life has tried to convince you otherwise. I was convinced by outside circumstances that I was unworthy of being loved. And that's a damn lie, because we're all worthy of being loved. And that truth lived in me for quite a while. It guided the relationships in my life where I was always looking for love. So let's talk about identifying emotions. So, first of all, at this point in my life, I can say that insight does not equal control, but it does give me a much higher threshold to figure out what I'm going to do. If I'm not starting down here just trying to identify what my emotion is, it's hard, right? That's why I would talk about our children learning it now. But I start about here, which is I've already identified what's going on. Now I need to pick a strategy to use, right? And most of the time I'm very good at that. But it took a lot of hard work and a lot of effort. A lot of people around me giving me grace and guiding me. A lot of encouragement from the people in my life. I love you all. Okay. So the biggest thing that I can recommend for building emotional resiliency is talk to your kids about their emotions. Notice them. Look for changes. Take an opportunity every day to ask them questions. Help them identify what they're feeling when they're young. Your kiddo's crying because they want that toy and brother's got it. You're feeling frustrated, aren't you? I can understand that. When they're not feeling well and they're sick, always your tummy's upset. I know that that's not good for your body, right? It doesn't feel good. Acknowledging that they have emotions and that they are human beings and that they are worthy of being acknowledged and loved, right? And again, the biggest thing that I come back to is that if they're able to identify their emotions, they'll be more able to talk about their emotions. The more that you talk with your child, the more comfortable they will be talking about uncomfortable things. Okay? So I would love to hear your suggestions as well below to talk about, do you have strategies that you use to talk with your kiddos about hard things, about things that they struggle with? Again, emotional resiliency, I think about some of my kiddos just not wanting even to start because they're afraid to fail. Again, having these conversations are what helps to give them perspective and understand that it's okay to fail, that failure is how we get to success. If you never even try, how are you going to succeed? You know what I'm saying? Okay, so my lyrical link is from Crawling from Linkin Park. I cannot take this anymore. Saying everything I've said before, all these words, they make no sense. I found bliss in ignorance. The less I hear, the less you say, but you'll find out anyway, just like before. I find bliss in ignorance. That line wasn't referring to me. So anyway, that's my lyrical link. Drop one below if you would like to. Now let's talk about some literature links. Okay, so the first one is The Pigeon Has Feelings Too by Mo Willems. Now this is a very simple board book. It only talks about 2 emotions, happy and sad. But this is a perfect bridge to start identifying emotions, add your own in, and talk about what does your face look like when you feel sad? What does your face look like when you feel angry? What does your face look like when you feel happy and joyful, right? This is a great starter book for beginning to even discuss emotions and showing like facial expressions that might go with it. Okay. The other book that I want to talk about is called The Boy with Big, Big Feelings. There are a couple of parts of this book that really stuck with me that I want to talk about. Sorry. So the boy tried to stuff all his feelings deep down to control what he thought he should hide, afraid that the others would make fun of him if they saw all that he felt deep inside. Would they think he was weak, dramatic? I got that one a lot. Afraid? Would they call him a wimp or a baby? If they saw the big thumping heart in his chest, would they not want to play with him maybe? So this book, again, is a great opportunity to talk about emotions, to talk about classmates who have big emotions, to talk about how we deal with big emotions, right? What happens when we have big, big feelings? How do we deal with those? So once again, I just think it's really, really important for us to have these conversations with our kiddos. So like, subscribe, drop a comment below and tell me what you're thinking. Do you have a lyrical link or a literature link? Thank you for joining me today. And until next time, remember that you have the courage to be brave and the ability to heal. Peace.